My name is Carla Black. I grew up in Seattle, in the University District, for those of you who know about Seattle. And I met my husband in Seattle. He is Panamanian. He went to study at the University of Washington, and we were bicycle fanatics for years. But we decided that we could come live in Panama. When he was 40, I was 30, and we closed the bike shop. We packed up and we came down to Panama. So when my husband Angel and I decided to settle down in Panama, we looked around at different places where we might live. He grew up on Lake Gatun in a small town, Escobal, but he went to school in the Canal Zone and around the city. And we knew we didn't want to stay in the city, but we thought, well, El Valle de Anton, that'd be great, beautiful place and quiet. And when we got there, and we spent a season there, we rented a house and spent a season, and realized that it was a weekend resort place for wealthy people from the city. And there was not a lot of real life going on in El Valle. So we had actually gone in, bought a piece of property, thought we had it all settled. And when we invested in a dairy here in Volcan, because of my husband's cousin suggested it, we came to work on the dairy and to upgrade some systems. We realized that Chiriquí was the beautiful place. People are working, there was actual life going on here. And so we settled down on one corner of the dairy property and built our house in the middle of a pasture. So Angel and I lived in Volcan, and we came out to the dairy every day to work on improving the water system, and we got a solar panel refrigeration system going for the milk to get it up to grade A. And we realized that out here, a little ways out of town, was really the best place to live, that we would give up the El Valle idea. So we segregated out 3 hectares, which is about 7 acres out of the dairy farm, and built our house right in the old worn out pasture and began planting trees. When we first came to this property, the 6-kilometer road from town, which is around 4 miles, took a half an hour to drive it because the road was in such bad shape. When a project came to improve the road is when we decided that year that we were going to build. There was no power out here and there was no public water system out here. So those 2 projects kept us busy while we lived here first. And now we're just 10 minutes from town. So we're far enough out to not have the noise and lights of town, but we're close enough that in 10 minutes we can be in town. Here we're surrounded by dairies, by coffee farms, by some meat production cattle, but mostly, fortunately, there's not a lot of agrochemicals being used in this area. That for me was important. If you get into the highly productive vegetable zones, you can smell what's going on. So for me, that turned out to be fortunate, but it's certainly something I would consider next time I look for somewhere to live. So now that I've lived here for 30 years, I feel like there are some ways that I fit in completely. My Spanish is quite good. I can hold the conversation on on any topic. It took me 5 years to get my Spanish that good, but I worked on it diligently at first, and it made a huge difference. And so the very best part of being here is finding new ways, new things to do, new ways of thinking. And I was not really a gardener when I first came, but it turned in to be the focus of all of my activities here. But at the same time, coming here opened up opportunities for doing everything new. And now with the internet, you can learn something new by reading about it every day and practically become an expert in a short time. So gardening became my thing. Then later, I thought, well, Volcan needs a recycling program, and with a number of friends who started working on recycling, we're doing a big recycle program here in Volcan, and I've been doing that for 9 years now. And there's so many things to keep you busy if you get out and look around for them, and that's my favorite thing about having come to open a new chapter in life. I think that what still, even so, is a little bit difficult is I realize that there is a bit of a culture gap. That I'm now president of the recycling group. I've been president of the Ladies Aid Association, the Soroptimists here in Volcan, and I realize that I don't fit in exactly 100%. I don't actually know how people think, but they've always accepted me beautifully from the very beginning. We came during the years at the end of the Noriega regime, and people were a little bit touchy about the U.S. invasion and having their sovereignty sort of impinged upon. But people, to me, were always beautifully kind. And as I was learning Spanish, it was always, any mistakes I made were a source of a lot of fun between us and never scorn. So I have always felt really welcomed in the Panamanian society and people, in spite of course, being a little bit different always. When we first came, we came with a very small nest egg. Our main investment that we thought we were going to retire on failed, so we came with a little bit of money in our pockets, and we built our simple house for $10,000 in 1994. Times have changed, and it doesn't cost the same anymore, and our house has sort of expanded a little bit like an amoeba as our interests have mutated as well. It takes in some gardening, and it takes in a second car, so there's more garage. But basically, we started very simply, and we've mostly maintained it very, very simply. My husband's continued to work. When we came, we were young, and we got out of the United States stock market pretty early and invested in local real estate. So we have rental houses, and then my husband is very curious about everything. He studied marine biology but was interested in computers, and he's gone into seismic measurements and other kinds of automated high-tech measuring instruments. And so he's continued to work, and our income has increased along with the ever rising cost of living in Panama, and which the cost of living here is not high, but it's always changing, and we've moved along with it over these years. For our health care, when we first arrived, I was 30, my husband was 40. We were mostly healthy. We maintained our United States health care policies for a while because we were traveling back and forth. and that worked for us. When we finally ended up being here full-time, we bought a private insurance policy, which is designed for expats. It's a British policy. And so we have catastrophic insurance, and we pay for all of our regular checkups. So far, that's worked for us. We didn't have pre-existing conditions when we got those. I don't use the national health care system, mostly because it's overstretched and it barely has the resources to cover people who really do need it. I feel like I didn't pay into that system from the time I was young, so it's absolutely available to anyone who wants to use it, but to me it just doesn't seem right that I, with other resources, do have to use it. However, that said, twice I've gotten into having dog bites from my own fault, and I've been able to go to the local hospital clinic where I was taken care of beautifully, 19 stitches and antibiotics, and I think the whole thing, including buying the antibiotics myself, I think the whole experience cost me $50. So, and I was taken care of really wonderfully. So for emergencies, really emergencies, we're great here in Volcan. Also in Boquete, any medium-sized town has a good health care. Here in Panama, I've always felt comfortable about personal security and personal safety for person and for property. And I attribute some of that to a national attitude of the people. Panama never had a serious guerrilla war. Panama has a certain, consumers are a little bit passive about their rights. People don't go demanding that the television be fixed right now. And so this attitude of a little bit of passive, well, whatever is, and I'm going to be a happy person, has its advantages for us, that people are not aggressive, and the thieves that may be are not aggressive, and certainly there's not as much thievery as in other places. It's just sort of not as much of the national makeup as, for example, Costa Rica, where people have to be careful of every shovel they leave out overnight. And so it has another frustrating aspect, is that people also, at the same time, don't stand up for their own rights, don't demand that things be done better, because people are happy the way things are. Panama was voted considered one of the happiest countries in the world, I think, 3 years ago. And that makes it really comfortable to live in Panama, for the good sides, and sometimes for the frustrating sides when you think, hey, you have to stand up for yourself. No, that's a lot of trouble. I'm gonna just take it easy. So that cuts both ways, but it's really comfortable living here. Angel and I first came here just after we were here in time for the invasion that was called Just Cause, that got rid of the Noriega dictatorship. And those years previous to the invasion had been so difficult economically that when, even after the invasion, Panama was pulling itself back together. The economy grew by 8 to 10% for 5 years in a row, and has continued to grow healthily. But when we first came here, I was happy to get beans and rice and nails to build the house with, and we made do with what was here. And David was a small city that closed between noon and 2. And if you needed some building materials, they said, hey, we can have those for you day after tomorrow. We'll get them in from the city. Well, that's a whole different story now. And I remember when I could first get some cheddar cheese in Panama after decades of not. So I feel super comfortable with what we can now buy, with the supplies that are available, with the foods that are available and now in Volcan, I really make a big effort to do all my buying in Volcan that I can. It's good for the local economy. It's good enough food for me, but when that's not quite enough, there's all of David. And when that's not quite good enough, there's all of the World Wide Web and the worldwide transportation systems that now, sure, it costs a little more to bring something in by mail, but everything else is a lot cheaper, and it comes out in the balance. And we basically don't think twice about ordering something that we need from the U.S. and it comes in fast, and it's definitely worth it. When new people come and if they ask advice, which they don't have to, I like to highlight our little mistake of thinking we knew which town we wanted to live in as soon as we got here, because we had visited it for seasonally over many years. We used to come down at Christmas time for years. My husband never missed a Christmas with his mother in all those years. And I started coming in '82 for a couple of weeks, and we knew that the getaway spots, El Valle de Anton, was one, and we thought, this is exactly where we want to live. And it wasn't until we had seen other towns and spent some time there that we realized that maybe first impressions are not necessarily the way to go as far as buying a property and just diving in. So I like to suggest to people to rent in the town that they think they want to live in, get a feel for it, see what the ambiance of the town is like, pay attention to where the sun comes up and which way the rain comes. So when you do build your own house, you have a nice feeling already about the sort of the site and the region that you would put it on. There's really no hurry to buy. There's a lot of places, nice places to rent. And when we first came, we'd spent half the year here and half the year back in the United States. So all of our possessions fit into the Isuzu Trooper, and we would rent a fully furnished little house each time we came. And we learned a lot about the neighborhoods. We learned a lot about the weather. We learned a lot about just really how we would make ourselves comfortable when we built our house. So when we built this house, we also, even so, we lucked out with the way that the view and comes in one side and the rain comes in the other side. So we were able to have our sliding glass doors and the rain doesn't come in. That happened to be fortunate, lucky, but the more observations that you make about a neighborhood, about a town, about your actual building site, the happier you'll be for the long run.